Hi everyone, my name is Harsha, and today we are going to talk about moving from API intelligence to API governance. This is actually based on the state of the market report that Treblle has sponsored and API Days is published as part of the API Insight series. The report is going to come to you in 4 weeks. So this is going to be a sneak peek, uh, talk about the report, which discusses current trends and practices in not just building APIs that are high value, performant and secure, but also making sure that they are governed smartly. The report looks at current trends in API intelligence and how teams can leverage their intelligence capabilities to create an org-wide API governance program where APIs are not just meant to exist, but to generate value, speed up development, and create new revenue channels and foster ecosystems. Um, my name is Harsha. I work as head of customers at Treblle. We are an API intelligence platform company. I'm based out of Bangalore in India. I work with APIs a lot, been doing that for the last decade. I spend a lot of time doing AI nowadays. If you want to connect with me, look at this QR code and feel free to drop a note. Uh, Kudos where it's due. Quick mentions here. Thanks to Mark Boyd, who is the author uh, and researcher on this report, in partnership with folks from Treblle, Vedran, David, Dower, and a bunch of others, including the API Days team, Mehdi, and a few of practitioners as well who are mentioned here. And a quick shout out to Mike as well, who did the technical review and design by Rebecca. So let's get to the best part of it. So let's ground ourselves first. APIs are not just tech interfaces anymore. We all agree they are business enablers. They power composable systems internally, automate workflows with AI. Uh, uh, Again, the point being, from building internal composable digital components to customer facing experiences or products. APIs help unlock the potential if they are built right and governed smartly. Uh, I mentioned this in the actual talk yesterday. Think of APIs as legal or relationship contracts, maybe. The value you get from the relationship or your legal contracts is directly proportional to consistency and clarity you provide. And that's exactly the same when it comes to APIs as well. So you want to make sure that your APIs have clarity, consistency, so you can be confident in them. So when does governance begin? We believe it begins with intelligence. Monitoring is passive, but intelligence is active. It's about identifying patterns, bottlenecks, vulnerabilities, and successes in real time. One of the things that we preach is governance doesn't mean bureaucracy, it means scaling good decisions. I'm going to talk about how I observed a billion requests and trends from another report that Treblle worked on last year, which is called Anatomy of an API 2024 report. We do this every year. And I'm going to share a lot of information from the Anatomy of an API report today, which correlates to how we can move from API intelligence to governance, and how anyone can move to practicing moving from intelligence to governance. We'll walk you through what you can do in 10 minutes, short-term gains that you can have in place within 10 days, or maybe a sprint cycle in your case, and maybe for larger projects and more org-wide adoption, how can you uh, uh, get things moving from a governance program within 10 weeks, or maybe 3 months or so. We focused mainly on three pillars: understanding API design, API performance, and API security, which these are where API intelligence offers the most leverage and where governance brings the most consistency. For API design, how predictable are APIs? Are devs guessing URL patterns or formats and payloads or response codes? And for performance, it could be something else, where which endpoints are slowing you down or slowing the business down, and why. For security, all are all APIs properly authenticated? Are there any zombie or shadow endpoints that exist in your ecosystems or landscape? So these are all not abstract risks. These are actually happening in enterprises today. So now let's drill down into things. Uh, API design approaches is meant for APIs that are designed leveraging some best practices, which are helpful for developers to understand uh, who is going to be the consumer of this uh, API. And as we know, consumers, when I say, these include internal developers who consume your APIs, or your partners, customers, or publicly, uh, if it's a public API, all the developers. But we also have a new consumer, which is AI. So making sure that your APIs that you're designing are also understood by AI, which is basically a machine. So in this section, we've sort of highlighted some of the things um, wherein you adapt some industry best practices and sort of uh, use that practices to make sure that your API consumers are being thought of much earlier in the life cycle than later on. So and also, one thing I want to mention before we go on is a lot of the things that I'm going to show you would reference the anatomy of an API report and the stats there. So if you do want to check it out, do make sure to just search for anatomy of an API report 2024. We've got one edition every year starting 2023. So you can just Google and find that, I'm sure. And let's start with rate limiting. We are not going to touch upon every single design element or design practice that is ideal, but we are going to cover some critical ones and also make sure to help people align on how you can get quick wins and plan imbibing these practices actually into your organizations and into your work. So rate limiting, as you know, it's essentially making sure that you control the requests that are happening on a particular API from your consumer. Uh, Limiting on the number of requests helps prevent abuse, things like scraping, denial of service attacks, and a lot more. So it helps to ensure that your service is not overwhelming your system and making sure it's keeping you safe. So one of the things that I've observed after analyzing a billion requests across industries, close to 500,000 endpoints, and maybe 15,000 plus APIs, is 85% of the APIs that we analyzed do not have rate limiting defined in their APIs. Only 15% have, and that's pretty shocking. So a simple header can prevent a flood. How can you the framework that we sort of mentioned here is how can you help fix this within 10 minutes? Add an X rate limit header to to one API, which is an impactful API or an important API, um, which you think should be controlled or should have best practices in place. And this shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes. Or identify the API that you'd want to do this. And within 10 days or a sprint cycle, you can move from defining what fair user policies are, and for both your internal APIs, partner or public APIs is there, what is a fair policy to have that rate limiting in place, and define it, document it, and get internal buy-in for this. And within 10 weeks or so, you can actually automate rate limiting review during your staging setup or environment or even CI/CD pipeline uh, for you to make sure that you're fully uh, making sure you're covering your bases right from start by truly automating the rate limiting piece. Moving on, managing API calls, returning responses, and managing API versions. This is a topic very close to my heart. API versioning is something that every single API producer has dealt with a lot of pain, in fact. And from our anatomy of an API report analysis, we've noticed that only close to 70% of APIs have some form of versioning in place. And close to 30% do not have versioning in place at all. When you do not define your API version, that's where breaking changes sneak in, and more so unannounced, which basically creates a lot of chaos for anyone using your API. And this becomes even more critical in the age of AI, because uh, if you do release a breaking change, the machine cannot understand that anymore, and the results would mess up. So, how do we suggest you go about this? Within 10 minutes, document your current approach to versioning. Uh, and that's it. It could be a URL versus a header, or pretty much anything. Define that breaking change and document it and get that internal buy in. And again, you could define this maybe for some of your most impactful or important APIs, and that's about it. And it's a quick win for you. Within 10 days, define what your org considers a breaking change. Identify non-breaking change fixes you can implement in your versioning program. So, and within 10 weeks, you can actually publish a versioning and deprecation policies or guide, and probably adopt them to some of your most important APIs or external APIs to start with, and then over time make sure that these practices are adopted across your API landscape internally as well. One thing uh, that I do want to mention is a lot of these require internal buy-ins, especially in large organizations, who I'm sure uh, a lot of you are, and that means showing them quick wins and results before going all in. And that's precisely where this framework comes into picture and actually helps you deliver those quick wins. A few of the practices when it comes to API design that we really uncovered is uh, design practices and naming conventions. 77% of endpoints that we've observed use nouns. But when we look at endpoints which uses plural forms, it's only 16% of endpoints that consistently used plural nouns. And small design inconsistencies like this cause much bigger downstream pain, especially when you're building APIs continuously and when you're scaling. So making sure that this 16% improves is very crucial, especially when machines are your consumers increasingly. So how do you go about this? You go about this by actually understand you go about this by actually understanding. In 10 minutes you can figure out what the appetite for uh, API governance is in your organization, which can be, like I mentioned previously, tricky, but you can get a sense of what that looks like. And within 10 days, you build a naming style or a or a style sheet, and adapt this for your most impactful or important APIs, or probably your external APIs if you have any, and sort of um, build this into a practice, and start seeing results where you're not having any where you're having the best design practices from an industry standard implemented. And within 10 weeks, create your own custom style guides or open API. Again, this could be an open API linter, or create a style guide based on uh, and bake in your own rules if needed, and sort of again implement this program uh, within a broader team or a broader product line, where you can actually start seeing consistent results. So uh, before adapting this to an overall org-wide program. Moving on, the second pillar is API performance. Uh, Performance approaches pretty much uh, is based on the value that we generate. These are accessible to ensure that APIs are accessible even when there are busy periods, and even when um, there are spikes, the expected uh, responses are returned and they do not drain any resources. Performance directly is proportional to your API adoption and your product adoption. Slow APIs cost you time, money, and trust. High performing APIs with correlate directly with high business results and outcomes. So in this section, let's drill down into what we observed and how you can fix this. Managing API performance. So uh, excuse me. 50% of endpoints that we observed are under 150 milliseconds, but 20% take over 500 milliseconds, and the remaining 30% takes over 300 milliseconds or so, which is not great. So use API intelligence to find and fix slow endpoints. And how do you go about doing that? Within 10 minutes, you can uh, use your headers and CDN URLs, and set up some alerts and thresholds to just be identified and gather this intelligence to make faster decision making. So tag slow endpoints in your ecosystems, maybe in your observability tools, whichever these are. And within 10 days, you can move on to prioritizing optimizations for some of these top traffic endpoints, maybe, or extend your intelligence to include cache and CDN metrics in your observability tooling. And maybe even start looking at adding distributed tracing if you have a microservices sort of a setup. And then within 10 weeks, you can actually move on to adding CDN, uh, cache, or compression to problematic APIs that you identify. Considers service worker scripts as well, and you map your data to your API usage flows. So you'll again, that's the reason we go about this framework, where you start small, but at the end of 10 weeks, you actually are making significant progress when it comes to improving your API performance. And then, last but probably the most important, API security. So, API security is a practice of safeguarding APIs against unauthorized access. It's about consistent baselines. It's not just about threat detection. Every API should meet some minimum security standard when you are exposing it to your consumers. So security ensures your APIs are not used as a threat vector to gain access, but rather to help you improve your performance and reduce threat levels to your systems. So let's look at what this has first. From a billion requests that we analyzed, 52% alarmingly are unauthenticated requests. And this was actually a significant, not very significant, but this was actually a slight uh, uh, improvement from 2023 analysis. So you can use tooling to review your APIs that are meeting security practices. Again, this could be your observability tooling or your API platform tooling. This review can be part of your API review and deployment process, so that API must be reviewed automatically before entering the CI/CD pipeline. And it's more important than ever for us to make sure APIs are secure. Within 10 minutes, you can actually review authentication, API design, and documentation. Confirm if maybe HTTPS is enforced on your most important services, or maybe even all of your services if you have a way to check it quickly, or if not, just for your external APIs or important services. Review this within 10 minutes, and actually understand where do you stand from a security standpoint. Of course, there'll be uh, uh, endpoints and APIs which probably do not need authentication in some cases, but be still good to review and go through that review process. And within 10 days, run a quick audit for zombie endpoints or exposed endpoints, and set up logging and analytics. Again, start with what makes sense for your most important and impactful APIs only. And then within 10 weeks, integrate uh, API security reviews in your CI/CD pipeline. Consider adding JWT for high volume APIs, or FPI for sensitive APIs, and so on. A few other practices when it comes to API security. Uh, Again, this should not be a shocker for anyone. Primarily, missing headers or unsecured endpoints and deprecated APIs that still live in every organization that I speak to. These are avoidable with smart governance protocols. Again, number of zombie endpoints. We've seen this grew by 11% from 23 to 24. API endpoints classified as active decreased from 76 to 65. So there are so many APIs uh, which are uh, uh, which are classified as active, but actually but actually in some cases have no usage. And number of APIs of HTTP versus HTTPS is 55% HTTP and 55% 45% HTTPS. So as I mentioned before, within a short span of time, check that you're using HTTPS, and within 10 days, move on to reviewing your security fields and review all zombie endpoints within a 10 weeks, where you have where you're building more automation scans into your release processes and cleaning up unused or unused endpoints or services. Just to bring this all together, APIs aren't just dev tools anymore. They are the backbone of AI systems. With 807% of AI-related APIs increase in 2024, according to our analysis. If your specification or your API isn't clean, your responses aren't predictable, you do not have properly structured documentation, you're basically out of the loop. There's a new consumer in the market, which is machines and LLMs, and making sure that your APIs are machine friendly and LLM friendly is the need of the hour. And as I just mentioned, we've noticed an 807% increase in AI related APIs in the last 1 year. And you can see on the right side that how this varies from percentage of APIs that are high quality when it comes to using Gen AI in at least one function. Technology sector being the highest, but the quality, the percentage of APIs that are high quality is still significantly low. So this is a good time for everyone to invest in making sure that your APIs are consumed well by AI. So again, even here, 10 minutes, identify which of your APIs might be used by AI, especially if they are public facing or external facing. And within 10 days, ensure your APIs can be understood by MCP servers or LLM models. And then within 10 weeks, create and redefine an API validation tool or a program uh, specifically for APIs which are using AI, and make sure these governance patterns that we learned today are applied. And to bring it all together, I'm going to pause here, and this brings us to the final piece. So I'm going to leave this until the end of the talk right now, um, where you can take this framework that we spoke about today and actually print this out, or follow this framework to improve your design practices, performance practices, and security and AI readiness, and actually move from understanding your APIs by gathering intelligence and moving towards an API governance approach across your API landscape. Thank you everyone for your time today. If you need anything related to this, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you.